Hello, my name is Pichia. Today I will be talking about the impact of prenatal perfluoroalkyl substance exposure on childhood health outcomes, a systematic review of adiposity, growth, and behavior. A overview is we'll be getting into the introduction of what perfluoroalkyl substance is and the history and background of what it affects and how does it affect the prenatal stages to childhood stages. And then we'll get into the definition of what perfluoroalkyl substance is and what it's made out of. And then we'll go into the risk assessments, where the risk of pregnant women or the risk of children, and what are the birth defects and the issues that the chemical substances can affect in a way. We'll also talk about the research and then the discussion of the overall studies and head into conclusion. So, an introduction, during the prenatal stage, women carry their infants and live in rural or urban areas that might have strong exposure of PFAS substances, and these chemicals are contaminated in soil, water, food, or products in everyday life. In a way, how does PFAS link or is associated with pregnant women that might affect their baby in adiposity, growth, and behavior? Pregnant women also face risk of PFAS and as it can cross the placenta and potentially affect fetal development, and increasing the likelihood of complications such as low birth weight and preterm birth. How can this exposure impact the defects in some children once they grow up and result in their health later in life? The systematic review of children and pregnant women will introduce the exposed chemicals of PFAS and impact in our study and findings, whether if there are strong associations in the prenatal stage with children's pubertal stages. So what is PFAS? Perfluoroalkyl substances are a group of synthetic chemicals widely used in various industrial and consumer products due to their water, stain, and grease-resistant properties. These chemicals seem to be related to prenatal exposure, causing children to have delayed effects after birth, causing low birth weight, bone variations, and high risk of obesity. The chemical substances are usually from manufacturers, airports, construction, and many other sources that are often leaked into our environment. And as you can see, this is like the um, chemical structure of what PFAS looks like. Risk assessments. First, perfluoroalkyl can be found in contaminated products like food packages and can be contacted by inhalation, ingestion, and thermal contact. Growth abnormalities like a decrease in bone mineral density, or sometimes it can be linked with type 2 diabetes in women, and women can also be infertile or develop thyroid cancer and liver damage. As mentioned by the NEIHS, perfluoroalkyls bioaccumulate, which means they can affect an individual over a long period of time. Even at a low or high concentration of exposure to PFAS, PFAS is mainly polluted in the air, and effects can cause disruptions in the endocrine system, affecting the immune system or metabolism, and can be contaminated through the bloodstream. Some research and discussion. Based on research, PFAS affecting children during prenatal stages, the chemical exposure has different effects contributing to the two genders. For one, girls have a higher percentage of adiposity issues than boys. In addition to what Moore finds from the study, PFAS is associated with gestational weight gain. Girls have more tissue than boys, and so the endocrine levels are much higher. According to the NIHS, perfluoroalkyls can alter metabolism and soon affects children in their childhood. For instance, the NIHESH suggests that PFAS can lead to thyroid cancer because it affects levels of hormones, breaks down certain individuals' immune health or organ systems dysfunctions. Some resolutions and discussion, depending on the gender, race, and age, doses can vary, affecting an individual's health outcome based on the mixture of PFAS substances. Doses can vary depending on the chemical composition of PFAS, Most children do not suffer from serious harm in their bodies from the PFAS as suggested by Mora, but findings cannot rule out that the association with PFAS in children will cause serious health effects later on. So socioeconomic status, class, and behavior can be impacted by PFAS is likely to harm those in poverty more than the environments that are well cleaned and maintained with high maintenance care. Females will have more of an issue with PFAS than males also. Some resolutions we can contribute is clean air, water, soil, and industry maintenance to avoid long exposure of PFAS in products like cookware, cooked clothes, and foods with plastic. Anything that contains fluoral chemicals, we should try to avoid or limit. In conclusion, provided by the National Institute of Environmental Health Services and some regulatory options they provide are for devices and technologies getting rid of PFAS and collaborating with federal, state, and public health agencies to control perfluoroalkyl substances. PFAS concentration in early to mid-childhood was null, and the association between mothers with higher or lower PFAS exposure was non-significant. However, PFAS was not the main reason for effects in children's adiposity, including high obesity or hormonal irregularities, but all studies still connect that PFAS chemicals each have their own irregularity in children's health outcomes since the prenatal stage. The PFAS substances have various chemicals that bond and can be exposed during prenatal stages and soon result in birth defects in children while they grow. But mainly, we conclude that PFAS is still a risk in environment, and the public health should still invent preventative measures to protect children's and women's health from these chemicals. And that's it. Thank you.